All right, everybody. Welcome back to today's first episode where we're doing the interview for 2023. This is the first one we're talking about this
Yeah.
year about meditation.
hmm
Last month, we finished up the year with talking about accessing your romantic self. Sorry, I just dropped my earphone. For those of you those things happen. Um, for those of you who want to hear about meditation and how it helps you access your romantic self, I've got that link for you down in the show notes, right? Okay, so today we are completely switching gears and discussing forgiving past hurts and breaking free from toxic relationships. Now, I bet a lot of you are probably really wondering, well, how does meditation really help me with that? Well, we're going to dive in that today in today's session.
hmm
Todd has a lot to talk about that. So I know if you are dealing with having a hard time to forgive people or breaking free from a toxic relationship, today's episode is really going to help you out. But before we dive into today's subject, I want to give just a short intro for those of you who do not know who Todd is and a little bit about his meditation practice. So, Todd is a licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed clinical social worker with 35 plus years of experience helping couples and individuals heal themselves from crises such as trauma and infidelity. He also helps couples rekindle the passion and aliveness in their relationships. Todd, like myself, is a firm believer in combining healing modalities in their practice, especially meditation, right? And you incorporate other things like EMDR,
hmm
emotional focus therapy, and meditation to help promote optimal healing and living for his patients and people who are enrolled in his meditation program. Todd, you've been practicing meditation for 40 plus years,
hmm
and I know that you've personally experienced how it has positively impacted your personal relationship with your wife, and I'm sure many other people, your own health. But we've got a really kind of a fun story that
Yeah.
Todd shared with me right before we
Right.
got on this episode. So we decided we were going to share that with you guys today, or Todd is, because it's just very apropos to what we're talking about. So why don't I let you share that fun
Sure.
story,
Sure.
and then we'll dive into today's topic.
Sure. Well, I was just sharing with Kristen here as we were about to do this interview that so I was realizing a metaphor that appeared in my life. And here's the thing. So I just started learning golf. Golf is one of those games that it's really difficult and very
Yes.
humbling. And I played a couple of golf rounds in last May was the first. Got thrown in there without knowing what I was doing. I was absolutely terrible. I was awful. I had maybe one good shot out of the 18 holes. I was pretty lucky, I guess, on that one. And then about a few months back, I was a little better, but still all over the place. And so I started taking golf lessons, actually with my wife, and I have had now 4 golf lessons under my belt. I went to the driving range on Friday, preparing for my Sunday outing, which was going to be part of my birthday celebration, which is coming up this week, was to have my daughter and a boyfriend come down from LA, and then I was going to go golf with John, and so I said, well, God, he's a good golfer. I said, let me go to the driving range, see how I do last Friday night. And I wasn't great. I made a lot of bad shots. It wasn't clicking for me, just wasn't terrific. So then on Sunday, yesterday, before we were about to start playing, I started taking some practice swings. And I looked at John. I went, oh my God, I got it. It just clicked what my golf teacher meant by getting my legs involved in the swing and not being all arms. I get it. And so we went to play. And lo and behold, I started hitting the ball pretty well. and it was thrilling, And I did have a few bad shots because old patterns take over, and then I had to make an adjustment. Like, why did I hit it so badly? And then hit it again, and then the next shot was like, whoa, there you go. I mean, I was so happy, and I was realizing that, like golf, meditation is similar in some ways because you need guidance, to just
Hmm.
meditate without guidance. For me, the 4 golf lessons, and he's a good golf pro teacher, was really instrumental. But also just practice, right? Just practice, and then suddenly it clicks. And then I've talked to some, very advanced golfers who said, it's humbling though, because you're doing well and then you lose it. But you know what? They stick with it and they gain it back. Well, I thought, well, meditation, you got to stick with it for a little while before you get the benefits. I mean, not that long, but at least a little bit, and sometimes you feel like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing this right? Why is this, why am I distracted? And sticking with it is one thing. Also, the guidance, such as a guide like myself, I think is instrumental, and it leads to such great benefits, like the benefit I had yesterday. I enjoyed my, you know, son-in-law to be. I think it's going to be my son-in-law. And I enjoyed his company, but I also have to say I enjoyed just the thrill of the sound hitting that ball. It was like, whoa, that's what it sounds like when you hit it right, and watching it
Yeah.
go. It was a thrill. So it's that way with meditation. I think people should, if they're having a hard time getting started in meditation, to realize that this is an asset. I mean, I will say a lot more even important than golf, because it
Yeah.
helps you in a deeper way, and it helps you in all areas of your life. Um, and I'm thinking the meditation actually helped me with golf, by the way, because I do believe it. I was able to be relaxed and kind to myself, and I think that helped, but that's a side story. But also to stay motivated and to get with it and to know that practice is what you need. And if you
Hmm.
suddenly have a tough meditation, stay, don't worry, stay with it. And, my program, I think, could be a big help, just like a
Yeah.
golf pro teacher. So
Yeah,
that's my
exactly.
story.
Well, you know what? I actually can totally relate to that, being a
You're
newer
a
golfer.
meditator and a
And
golfer.
I'm a
Yeah. Yeah.
golfer. And you
Yeah.
know what? Here's one tip that I also will say. And what I think meditation does is it helps you have kinder conversations in your head when
Yes.
when you are messing up at something, whether or
Yes.
not it's
Yeah.
golf, which can be, like sometimes you're going to play great and sometimes you're not, but getting up there and practicing makes all the difference. But I do think it makes me a kinder, not only to people around me, but kinder conversations inside of my head.
That's
So you
exactly
know
right.
what, that could relate to exactly what we're talking about today,
Yes. Good
because
segue.
we're talking about freedom. Freedom from the pain from the past, freedom from guilt, freedom from resentment, freedom from toxic relationships, freedom from self condemnation. Those are those kind of conversations that we have that are not really good, that we have with ourselves, right?
Right.
And
Right.
freedom for self doubt. So let's dive into today's discussion, Todd, because I just, that is perfect, right? So let's talk about pain and why it's an inevitable part of our human experience. I mean, when you say that we tend to hold on to past hurts, which closes off closes ourselves off to our life energy. So
Yeah.
why don't we talk about that, why it closes us off, and why pain is an inevitable part of our journey, right? It is. It just, you can't get around
Yes.
it, you
No.
know, and if you say you don't have pain, then man, I don't know what life you're living, but
Then you're numb. No,
yeah,
it's true.
right?
Um, Wish I deal with that too with people. I help them deal with numb, and
Yeah.
meditation can help with that too. But no, look, we all have hurts because things don't go our way. I mean, our partners don't treat us the way we want them to. Sometimes our careers aren't going, or one day particularly doesn't go the way we want, or we get into traffic jams, or we have a health issue that comes up. And so there's all kinds of things that happen in life. It's just part of being human. And uh, the key is to not get caught up in the pain. And I know what we could talk about forgiveness, like when interpersonal pain, right? So we have interpersonal pain. That's one kind of
Right.
pain.
Right.
It's the pain that we maybe are focused mainly on this month. And interpersonal pain is inevitable too. So
Yeah.
when we get hurt, uh, we tend to get an inflammatory response. Just like if I get physically hurt, like I fall or something, the knee swells up or whatever part swells up and gets red. Maybe there's a black and blue. It's the blood, you know,
Mm-hmm.
collecting in that area. It's
Mm-hmm.
what happens when we're inflamed. Emotionally, it's the same thing in a way. It's we get inflamed, we get swelled up in a certain area, and then there's a hardened area. We protect ourselves to protect. Whereas the physical, we protect our tissues. Emotionally, we protect our wounded parts. So if a person hurts us, the wounded part of us gets protected by a callus, and we could become calloused. We could close down, or we could get very uh, reactive and hyper-reactive and fight and yell and scream too. So those are all protective ways of dealing with the hurt. And I do processes like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing to help people with trauma, to help them move through it, which is a big part of what I do and a big part of my practice. Meditation is a parallel to that to me. I've learned that meditation is a way to access the part of us that transcends the hurt. Like what the hurt is at a certain level, and
Mm-hmm.
meditation helps us go to a deeper level that gives us some perspective so that we're not always reacting in the pain level, the fight or flight over and over again, closing down, hurt, or some people just stay closed down.
Or they
But
ruminate. Or
or
they
they
ruminate
ruminate, they
because they
ruminate.
feel guilty. I'm one of those. I'm a ruminator.
Right, right. I feel guilty because, oh, I
Yes.
hurt somebody else, or I did this to somebody else,
Or
and
it
they're
must be
upset.
my fault
It
that they're
must be
mad
my
at me.
fault, which people take responsibility for things that are their faults, but sometimes for things that aren't. And
Yes.
and so meditation gives us some, I love the word, I mean, freedom. I mean, doing
Yeah.
that 20 or 30 minutes, in my case, usually 20, 22 minutes or so of what I teach, the meditation is a moments when you could be free of being captive by the pain in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, and form. So that when you're out of meditation, you've had an experience that gives you some perspective, and you're also able to respond outside of the pain reaction. It
Mm-hmm.
might actually set off a healing process with that other person because you're not in it so much. You're just not in it. I'll tell you a funny story about that. My wife and I would go to this yoga class, and this yoga teacher was really geared towards meditation. It wasn't one of those hot yogas, or there's some yogas that are really like a
Mm-hmm.
workout. This was not. It was a challenge appropriately to us, and we stretched, but it was a lot of meditation. So I would come, it was a 5:45 p.m. class. I'd come from my office, she'd come from home. We'd meet there, we'd hug each other, we'd lay down our mats next to each other, and we'd do our yoga. There was one morning we got in a fight, and we were so angry at each other. And I went to work, didn't talk to her all day, didn't connect. She didn't
Oh.
connect with me. I went to the yoga class. We didn't even look at each other. We were really mad. We didn't look at each other. I took my yoga mat and I put it on the opposite end of the room. That's true. And well, it was an hour class. After the hour class, I rolled up my mat and I moved towards her, and I looked at her and she looked at me, and almost at the same time, it was like, what the heck were we fighting about? And we embraced each other, and that was it. It was it. It was like this yoga meditation. By the time we got through it, we realized we were in a totally different state of mind,
Yeah.
and we weren't caught up in it. Like we were coming from a deeper place, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and it just was irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
to our deeper connection. And so that was it. And we,
I love I love that. It's one of the things I love, about working with you and hearing you talk about all this stuff because you're real. You've got 30, you've been married to Sherry for how long has it
38
been?
and a half years. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have the same things that every couple goes through. And from your experiences, I mean, you practice what you preach, and you let your experiences guide you, I think, to whether or not it's meditation or whatever, but you're more relatable because you have these
Thank you. Yeah,
experiences. And I'm
sure.
sure that anybody listening to this can relate to, yeah, I had an argument with my spouse and maybe they didn't go to a yoga class or meditate, but I think one of the things about meditation is it gives you this container. I'm a meditator too, right? To actually look at these thoughts from a more detached
Yeah.
point of view. So if you're dealing with, right, guilt, hurt, self doubt, all these things, you notice them, but you notice them in a way that don't trigger you so much.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And you have access to that part of you that wasn't wounded. There is a part of us that was wounded, but there's parts of us that are not. It's the
Is
part
that
of
in your
us.
subconscious? I'm curious because I know you know a lot
It's
about
hard
that
for
stuff. And now
it's
in my head, I'm curious.
it's hard to, I mean, yes, it probably, you could say it's part of the subconscious, but there's another kind of approach that I used called internal family systems with some clients. And
Mhm.
they talk really very clearly about that we are made up of different parts, right? We have we have the wounded parts.
Right?
Some of them were deeply wounded at a young age, some just wounded day-to-day life, whatever, but the wounded parts. But we have these protective parts, and there's several kinds of protective parts. There's the managers that keep us together and strong and hide the part of us that maybe feels inadequate. So some of these people they overcompensate. They have to be successful, the perfectionists and whatever. That's the manager part. There's also the firefighter parts. Those are the ones that distract us from ourselves. Maybe these are people that are acting out. Maybe they drink too much or they gamble too much, or they even infidelity could be part of that sometimes. But in the system of internal family systems, they also say, and that we have a self with a capital S. And the self is that part of us that we all have that is that is beyond the wounds. They so use the same terms. And they use a lot of C words. It's the part of us that's courageous, compassionate, conscious, confident. I'm missing. There's others. There's like 9 C words they use, but this is part of us. So that's very analogous to what I'm saying. Is that there's
Yeah.
parts of us,
Yep.
whether we call it in the subconscious, it's a part of us. Like there's a seed of wellness that's in us. There's a seed of health and healing. There's a seed of unconditional love that when we access that it's easier to let go. It's easier to forgive others,
Hmm.
and it's easier to forgive ourselves because we realize who we really are deep down. It's just that we get wounded. And oftentimes, when people hurt us, they're coming from their wounds. And when we hurt others, we're coming from our wounds. And that's part of the human experience. But that we have this place we could go that is absolutely
Wow.
a big capital S self that could do
Okay,
that.
great. Because I know you talk about it a lot. Like it gives us the access to our part of ourselves that is whole and all of that. And you just distinctly described that
Yeah.
to the audience. So what you've said is that meditation really gives people access to that part of themselves that they need to draw the strength from or the guidance
Yes. And
from.
the courage from all of that. Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Courage to
awesome.
forgiveness is courageous, to be
Oh,
vulnerable again after I've been
yes.
hurt. It's
Hmm.
courageous. And if we could tap into an area that isn't caught up, it gives us, it's almost like the key to the lock that have imprisoned us from pain. So we get
Yeah.
freedom from the pain.
Wow. Wow. Then that's really the reason why you combine all these healing modalities into your practice, which, is really different than a lot of people do these days. And meditation. So if there's people listening out here, the big takeaway is that you have this whole part inside of you, and meditation really helps people access it.
Absolutely.
That faster, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Definitely.
awesome.
Definitely.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Okay. So let's go into the next question. I mean, that was just that we could have just ended the whole podcast right
I
now.
know.
That was
I get on
really
it.
deep. That was like, I love that. So let's talk about like the pain. Let's really dial in on the pain that happens when we get stuck in toxic relationships or patterns, and how we can break free from them. So again, I think that this whole conversation we just had about that part that's well inside of us, or that whole, probably applies here too. But I want
Mhm.
you to explain it specifically around toxic
Medita-
relationships
Oh,
and toxic patterns.
sure. Okay. So toxic patterns, similar to when I use the word dysfunctional, usually is when we're in relationships where we can't be our true self. There's not room for us to express our true self. We're oftentimes mm, thrust into a tiny role, like I
Mm-hmm.
need to be the rescuer, or I'm the black sheep, or whatever the role. Um, Toxic intimate relationships, there's oftentimes gaslighting where a person
Yep.
feels like, what's wrong with me? But they feel stuck. They feel like they can't move. The other person's really good at making you feel like it's your fault, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
Person goes, oh, maybe it's me. And so, if we could do a process like meditation, where our goal for 20 minutes or so is to sit still and to practice, the word practice is important, not being distracted by our thoughts. In a sense, practice losing our mind just for 20 minutes or so that we could just be. Uh, we we come out of that oftentimes with that courage. It's sort of like my wife and I in the yoga class, right? We go, what the heck were we caught up in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a toxic pattern, basically. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a toxic relation, but good relationships have toxic patterns still sometimes. And hopefully, the better the relationship is, the more we could heal quickly and repair them, right? So that was
Right.
an example of a repair. Well, what happened? I mean, I'm all for communication. I teach couples communication all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular case, we didn't communicate at all. I was on the opposite side of the yoga classroom. And yet my own internal process helped me have a clarity, so that we broke out of the toxic pattern. If you have a toxic relationship where someone is not willing to grow, not willing to shift, like she did and I did, like, and they're just stuck in their ways, and the only way to be with them is to be what they put onto you, and it feels terrible, then having a meditative practice helps you, give you the strength to break free of it. Whether that break free means you stay who you are and they have to shift, or it means seeing them less often or totally severing the relationship, the meditation can help you access that part of you that has the confidence to take care of yourself. You get in touch with your self compassion, and when you're in that place, then when you come out of it and you see this toxic pattern, it's like it doesn't fit anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, I was in this
Yeah.
really self-caring, loving place just by sitting quietly, and you doing that is not resonating with me. Whereas before it did, because maybe I had my own. I've learned to have self-contempt as I meditate, and I learn self-love and self-acceptance unconditionally. The toxic pattern doesn't fit anymore. It just doesn't fit, and so it's going to have to change. That person has to grow, or I'm out of here, and
Right.
that's what happens.
Right. And sometimes it only takes, one person to make that shift, and then
Absolutely.
everybody
Absolutely.
shifts in the relationship. Those are the happy
Yeah.
endings, right?
It is, and I see many of those happy endings. And but it's happy either way. It's better. It's great if the relationship can shift and you can grow and you can be with that person. If you're talking about an intimate relationship, or you can have a relationship with your mother or whoever or your sibling that it used to be dysfunctional, toxic, and now it's not.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's happy if the person's not willing to shift it. You're free of it.
Yeah.
You're free of being controlled by it emotionally.
Yeah. Oh, that's big. That's big. Well, we've got two more questions that we're going to go through. Actually, we got three more. We got a lot on this topic today. But before we dive into the second half of this podcast interview, I want to just take a moment here because we've got some information for those of you who are interested in building their meditation practice and having an expert guide who is experienced in both meditation and self and interpersonal healing. Todd has a program. It's called the Meditation for Self and Interpersonal Healing Program. You designed, Todd, this program to help people, couples and individuals, be more open to closeness and depth, decreasing reactivity, and developing more relationship harmony and love. And it works whether or not both parties are
Hmm.
meditating. Because, like we said, it only takes one person to change. And it's not about changing you, but it's more about giving, as we've talked about, the access to the part of you that is capable of more intimacy, more vulnerability, less reactivity, more love, including self-love, forgive, less doubt, less guilt, all those kinds of things. So it is really, really an amazing program. And again, you don't have to be in a relationship for this to work. It can help you with your relationship with your partner, of course, your kids, your parents, your friends. It filters out into the entire world. And I know too that for me, just being able to take that 20 minutes to meditate and truly rest, it's like, it's just a big, big help for anybody. So, Todd, recently he had a program. I think you did a special session last month, and one of the participants, he had something that he wanted to share in your program, and or that he shared about how it's really helped him. And I really want to share this with everybody. And let me just take a minute here and paraphrase of what he just said. He said, "You're giving us stuff in this meditation for self and interpersonal healing that we never had as children. You're helping us open up to our inner resources, that inner self, right? Something that our parents weren't able to teach us." And that really goes along with everything that we have talked about. And this program is just 47 bucks a month. You get 2 guided meditations, plus you do a practice guide, and the topic changes every single month, kind of funnels through all kinds of topics that people need help with, want help with. And we have a special going on. I think you can sign up now for just 47 bucks you at the end of the 3 months, you can choose to cancel your membership or you can continue. And I think one of the things that's been so awesome is that everybody that has signed up for it for the 3-month trial, which I've got the link in the show notes for you, has said they're going to stay because they get so much benefit out of it, especially when you do those retreats, which Todd does a special retreat, 90-minute retreat on Zoom every other month, where you meditate together as a collective and you talk about topics that are relevant to what people are going through right now. So again, it's a great value for just 47 bucks. You can join Todd's meditation for self healing and interpersonal healing program, and the link is right below. So Todd, is there anything else you want to add to that for our listeners?
Yeah, well, I've noticed the people that do the program consistently are giving me great feedback. The more they do it,
Mhm.
the better the feedback. So it tells you something, just like my
Yep.
golf. The more you
Yep.
practice. So yeah, I've another person said that he said I was a little skeptical at first. I tried doing this. He's another person that went to my recent life retreat and said, but I did it and I started getting benefits and I look forward to it every day. He actually signed up for a year, and
Right.
but he just he's really into it. He goes, but if you don't do it, you don't know the benefits. So it's kind of one of those
Exactly.
things. So
Yep.
yeah, I think it's great. Like I said, every month's a new theme, and you start at month one and you progress from there. I would say you once you every month is special unto itself. It's not like you have to be more advanced in month three than month one. It's all about just doing it, and it gives you access, and there's different what I call internal postures to help you achieve those those that sense of self, that sense of knowing that yourself and experiencing yourself at these liberating levels.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So two veteran meditators here. We both know the changes that it's made in our lives. And not even just that, it's just like this feeling every day of well-being. So it's a good self-care
Yeah,
gift that you can give to yourself. It's less expensive than getting a massage or anything like that,
a lot
a
less.
lot
Yes.
less, but the benefits, you every single day. So again, we've got that link down in the show notes for you today, but let's go on and kind of talk more about the concept, because you talk about that. I've heard you talk about this in the program itself, the concept of our higher and lower
Oh.
selves. You talk about that, and I think that that's very important, especially when we're talking about forgiveness this month, right?
Mhm.
So, how let's talk about the concept of that and how being able to access your higher self can help break free from a toxic pattern or a toxic relationship.
Well, people in the fields of meditation and spirituality hear that you'll see this in books. You'll hear this when people talk about your higher self, whatever the heck that means, and your lower self, whatever the heck that means. So I try to make it real practical for people. The lower self is the self where we're trying to survive.
Yeah.
We're in survival mode. We're reactive, and the higher self is a self that's free of trying to survive. It's actually when we're coming from our higher self, it's that part of us that doesn't have to fight or compete with others to be okay. They're actually recognizing we're all connected on some level, and that it's this whole part of us that realizes a win for us is when we're loving others, not
Yeah.
beating others. And I'm all like the sports and all that, but that's great. But actually, even the most successful athletes, if you really ask them, their life, their intent is to just have the joy every moment of playing the game. And the outcome is they might win, but they're not doing it just to win. They're actually not, even though winning feels great. But um, but those that really come from their higher self play better. So that's the part. It's the part that's free of survival, free, we're not going around all the time. Um, Now let's talk about forgiveness, for example. Okay,
Yeah.
from the lower self, you hurt me, and I have to protect myself. From the higher self, it's yeah, I was hurt, and I'm not denying that. But you're a human being who's flawed but loving in your core, and I'm a human being that's flawed but loving in my core. So let's connect.
Right.
So it is the creative part of ourselves. We're not reactive. I've said this for years. There's a difference between being reactive and creative. They're actually opposites to me. The reactive person doesn't create anything. They're just reacting to the other person. We react, I react, you react, I react, you react. But the creative person says, what do I really want to happen here?
Yeah.
What do I really want? What in my deepest part of my being, what do I want? Most of us healthy people, relatively healthy people, in the deepest part of our being, we don't want war. We don't want to make war. We want to make love. And so the higher self wants to make love. The lower self um, will want to make war when they're hurt. The higher
Yeah.
self wants to make love when they're hurt or not. That's
So
one way of saying it.
that's really helpful. Like if you have, like you said earlier about your little, your tiff you had with Sherry, where, that's a toxic pattern. And everybody probably has those things come up, mistakes they make, whatever. But what if someone is stuck in a toxic relationship? Yeah, okay. You can't just go and say, okay, there's
Yeah,
a point where
yeah,
you have to say no more and you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
break free. You
yeah,
you maybe try it and
yeah.
then they keep going, they're a gaslighter. They just keep, you
It,
can't
you know,
break it.
you've both said this a lot, but you said it. You said it takes one to make a change. It is true.
Right.
But if I want, it takes. If I ask my wife to dance, it takes one to get that going. But if
Right.
she says no, I'm not going to dance, then it's silly for me to keep dancing.
Right.
So I could I stop. If I really want to dance, I got to find another dance partner, I guess.
Right.
So that's true. I mean, in toxic when we're really in a toxic relationship, the first key is to have a better relationship with ourselves. So we're not so stuck in, like we talk, a lower self, or we could say a fear-based self, and we can access the courageous love-based self, which then says no, no more. So I have to be able to say no,
Mm-hmm.
no. Uh, Being self-compassionate sometimes looks like being kind and open. Sometimes that's self-compassion. When you're in a toxic relationship, nope, I'm done with that. That's what it looks like. And so, again, meditation, among other things, but definitely meditation can be one of those phenomenal tools to help us access the parts of us that are able to go no.
Right.
And once I say no, now I've given that other person a choice they didn't have before. Because before they thought, I could do this, and you're still there. But it's like, no, I'm a believer in ultimatums. I am. I think ultimatums can be very helpful. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, either you go to therapy with me or by yourself, let's say, and make a change, or we're done.
Yep.
And I have an attorney right here that I'm going to call. I'm just giving that as a real life example. And
Right.
the other person is like, now has a choice. And if they choose their own toxic ways, then now you have to respond to that.
Yeah.
But meditation helps us do that when we have to.
Awesome. That leads me into my next question. Forgiveness is an important part of that healing process, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, it's all part of whether or not you stay with them or whatever. But will you please share, like, why forgiveness is really more about helping you off the hook, right? So
Hmm.
for those people that are leaving, or a relationship, whether it's a toxic relationship or they're committed infidelity, but why it's letting you off the hook, and it's not anything about letting the other person who hurt you off the hook. And again, I've
Yeah,
heard this, I've had this said to me before. One of the best revenges in life is living a great life.
it's true. It is very true. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
look, I mean, people, when they say forgiveness,
Yeah.
a lot of people say, I'm not going to forgive that person. And there's reasons for that, good reasons, actually. They don't want the person to get away with it. They also don't want to feel like, wow, what happened to me doesn't matter. So
Right.
those are things that are very, it makes sense to me that person would not want to forgive under those circumstances. So what I try to do is say, well, what really is forgiveness? And forgiveness is letting go of letting go of the pain inside of me that is attached to what you did to me.
Mm.
And that doesn't make us foolish or dumb. If let go of the pain, and I feel good, maybe that still means I still don't want to be with you, or you need to work on yourself in order for me to have a deeper relationship with you again. I need my space until you do that. But while I have my space, while trying to work out that toxic pattern that you have, I'm free of the pain.
Yeah.
That person's still on the hook in a sense to work on themselves, not to be punished because I mean, obviously people have natural consequences. I mean, the natural consequences of you saying I'm free means they're forced to make a choice and now they have to deal with it.
Yeah.
To what else you said too is um, I do believe that some people might seem like they're off the hook legally and economically, but they're not cosmically. In other words, a person who has committed consistent hurtful acts towards others is never happy. Never. I've never met a happy narcissist, for example. Narcissists are
No.
not happy. They may have moments of "I got you" or "I'm great, look at me," but they're very short-lived. They're not really happy. So, as a person is faced with the choice, do I forgive or not? Um, I would always encourage them to choose forgiveness because it's about letting go. And we have to do it in a gentle way.
Hmm.
And in my meditations about forgiveness, I always say language such as forgive to the degree that you're able to, or forgive to the degree that feels right to you. But we have to realize that forgiveness is always in the direction of letting go of your pain, not letting the other person get away with it.
I, I totally, I mean, I think that's the key right there. It's letting go of your pain so that you can go on and live an amazing life. And
Mhm.
I can say that from my own experience.
Yes, you've gone through some
Right,
things.
gone through infidelity with a former partner, and you know what? I had to go beyond that to get to the life I really imagined for myself,
And
right?
be open to the good relationship you're in now. And
Exactly.
that's really the benefits of forgiveness is that makes you make room for an open heart. And that doesn't mean you open your heart to someone who's dangerous, but that you open your heart because it feels good, and then you still have an intuition that says, is this person trustworthy? you know, so again,
Those are
meditation
lessons
frees
that you
us.
carry forward. So why don't you do you have an example, of a couple where, forgiveness, whether or not they're still together, but where they were able to forgive and go beyond, whether or not they're still together or not, it doesn't matter. But I think if you can give an illustration, then that
Yeah.
would be really helpful to
Well, I
anybody
mean,
listening to the conversation.
as a person whose main specialty lately has been dealing with infidelity, I have
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of examples. So let me choose
Unfortunately,
one.
yeah. Yeah,
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 no, I do. And forgiveness is hard because if I forgive you, I'm just thinking, I am thinking specifically of one couple right now. A good example. It just popped into my head, right? So he cheated, he cheated with someone he works with, but that had a friendship with the wife. And this woman was a very manipulative person, probably aggressive and had a plan, but he
yep,
succumbed to the plan.
yep,
Um, I have another couple, the same exact story, but I'm thinking of this one in particular. And, it was really hurtful, obviously.
yeah,
And she was ready to divorce. And when they saw me, they were ready to divorce. And helping them through the therapeutic process, but also meditation, she is opening up her heart to her husband, but other things are happening, so she is forgiving herself,
mm,
forgiving him, I'm saying, and forgiving herself actually for staying in the relationship and giving it a chance and recognizing that he's worth it because he's doing all the right things. He's working on it, he's letting go, he's committing, he's communicating more openly. And yet she said, and he has got a decision to make, you still work there.
oh,
They both teachers and they both work at the same
yeah,
school. And
hmm,
so there he's going to finish out the term and he'll either ask her to leave nicely, he can't make her, or he might leave even though he has a very established work relationship with the other teachers and the principal, and even just he's a name at that school, you know.
Hmm.
So it's a difficult choice that he might have to make, and he's willing to make that choice so his wife could feel good. But it's an example of she's forgiving,
Yep.
but she's not. She's still being sensibly protective and saying, I trust you, but still she's really there, and I'm not sure when she's going to come at you again, and it doesn't feel right there. And so, but her forgiveness is allowing them to get closer. Every time I see them, they're getting better and better. And now he's got a decision to make on how he wants to deal with this
Wow.
situation in the school environment.
Wow, that's a pretty complicated situation. But the
Yeah.
fact that remains that, the forgiveness is like the first step, but the fact that he was willing to do the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's key. Like,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
for anybody, that's when you're staying in the relationship. But when you're not staying in the relationship, you still have to practice that forgiveness. But that's really for
You
you.
could forgive someone and not be with them. You
Exactly.
could forgive someone and not like them, but you want to forgive them because
Yeah,
you want to let go of the pain inside of you. You don't want to make it your problem anymore. It's bad enough you went through it once. You don't have to keep going through it. So again, it's a
exactly.
process. It's a
Yep.
process, but it's still a process where the end point, or at least what you're moving towards, is becoming freer of that pain.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's, I think, it for today. This has been one of our longer conversations we've had, but that is it for today's podcast interview about forgiveness and healing and breaking free from toxic relationships. Again, if you want to know more about Todd's meditation for self and interpersonal healing program, which will really help expedite learning how to forgive and heal yourself, you can find the links right below in the show notes. Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back again next month. I don't even think we know what we're talking about. We might next month, but you know what? I think we have a list somewhere, but it's bound to be something
It
that,
is. It's going to be
the
good.
listeners are going to want to hear
Yep,
about. So
I'm
thanks so
sure.
much. And we'll see you everybody next month.